I haven't got the patience today, I really haven't.
Now settle down.
Fucking hell! I'm really getting fucking mad with you! Every fucking time point! You had your shut up, fucking sit still! Oh, shut up. Take all the pictures you want! Find all you want! You can't! Just let me in the doorsteps! But we're not in the offices! We don't fucking care! We're never going away! And we always win!
That is fucking disgusting. Did you kill yourself? How do you feel about that? You skin alive? I bet you have a nice cat at home too. Did you skin that? You fucking pervert.
I did have one experience, I think, back in 1975, I think, which was a life-changing experience, and that was because I was with Greenpeace at that time, and we'd come up with this idea of protecting whales by putting our bodies between the harpoons and the whales. And we were reading a lot of Gandhi back then, and we thought, hey, well, you know, this would work. And I found myself in a little rubber boat behind a pod of 8 magnificent sperm whales that were fleeing for their life, and behind us was this 150-foot long Soviet harpoon vessel that was bearing down on the whales. And every time the harpooner tried to take a shot, I would maneuver and block his path. And it was working for a while until the captain came down the catwalk rather angrily, and he screamed into the ear of the harpooner, and then he looked at us, smiled, and brought his finger across his neck like this, and that's when I realized Gandhi wasn't going to pull us through that day. And a few minutes later, there was this horrendous explosion, and this harpoon flew over our head and slammed into the back of one of the whales in the pod, and there was this incredible scream. It was a very human-like scream, and took me completely by surprise. I didn't expect a whale to sound like that. Suddenly, the ocean erupted, and I turned in time to see the whale throw himself straight at the harpooner to protect his pod. And the harpooner just pulled the trigger and at point-blank range set another harpoon into the head of the whale, and it exploded. There's blood and gore and everything everywhere, and the whale fell back in the water screaming and in agony, and as he turned, I caught his eye, and he looked straight at me, and now he dove again, and I saw a trail of bloody bubbles coming straight at our boat, and he came up and out of the water at an angle so that the next move was to come forward and crash down on top of us. And I looked up into this eye, and it was right there, and an eye the size of my fist, really, and what I saw in there really changed my life, because the whale understood what we were trying to do. Because the easiest thing to do at that moment was to come forward, but instead I could see the effort he made as he went back and then slid back into the sea, and I saw his eye disappear beneath the surface, and then he died. The whale could have taken our lives and chose not to do so. So I feel personally indebted to that whale, and I've tried to save as many of his kind ever since.
I've been at the ASPCA for 10 years, and then before that I worked at an animal shelter in Long Island, and that's where it all came together for me. That's when I realized how many animals were being abused and neglected, and I really needed to do more. So when I found out there was a law enforcement department, I said, you know what, that's what I need to be. I can do that. I can lock people up for hurting animals, and that's what I do, and I love what I do.
And do you know that I was nervous about adopting a dog, because I thought, well, what if I'm not home all the time? And then I thought, wait a minute, a dog is better off with me than about to be euthanized in a shelter. What am I doing? Go get the dog.
Protesting what they call barbaric conditions at LA's animal shelter.
And so I volunteered at a local animal shelter. And one morning I got there early. And I went into an area that I wasn't supposed to be in. And I saw these dogs lined up down a hallway, each one with a rope around their neck. So each one was taken, one in front of the other, slapped on a stainless steel table, held down against their will. Their eyes were wide with terror, and they were being killed. They weren't being euthanized. They weren't being put to sleep. They were being killed. And I realized then that I had to do something. It was so horrific that we were killing man's best friend. And I thought, how can this be? How come I, as a compassionate person, didn't know this was going on? And it's because it's hidden. It's hidden from the public.
We can't turn our backs on what we know so plainly now.
Somebody had called and said there were 6 dogs and they were in the mud and the mother was dead and could we go get them? We went by there and I had on slacks, she had on, first time I'd ever seen anybody have a pink suede suit. It was gorgeous. So we stopped at the place and she tells me to get out of the car, go knock on the door and see if anybody's there, which I did. Then I came back and said, nobody's there. Did you knock on the window? Knocked on it. Anyway, I said, but I can see the puppies, they're in the mud. And she said, well, go get them. I said, go get them. She said, go over the fence and get the dogs. And she was the type of person when someone told you. So I get out, go over the fence. There's 6 of them in the mud, just little puppies. Nope. Pick 2 of them up, come back, hand them to her. She puts them back to the car. Then before I know it, and she was always had on high heels and stockings. That's when everybody wore slips. And she took off this skirt that was pink suede and held it out and said, go get the rest of the dogs and put them here. And we took them to the vet. It was hard, but then it was a lot of joy. There was a lot of heartbreak. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of drinking when we got upset. But most of the time, we felt really good that we'd done a little bit. Well, I mean, a lot of people won't take an animal to the shelter. I mean, because they say, oh, I just couldn't possibly do it. But they'll let it starve or let it out.
How can you fucking drop these little babies? How can you do that?
Because people do, they're disgusting.
That's disgusting.
And they shouldn't have animals to begin with.
I mean, how? I just can't imagine. Oh my gosh, you're so cute.
I think it was 1992 when there was a German couple who was honeymooning not far from here at the Grand Canyon. And it was a hot August day, and they were hiking there, and they came across a mother cat and her 3 kittens who were huddled up against a rock in this blazing sun, and they'd obviously just been, abandoned there. They'd been dumped there by people passing by. And they scooped up the mother and these baby kittens, rushed to the car, drove to a gas station, said, help, where do we go now? And somebody directed them to Best Friends. And they were here within about an hour, and they stayed around while we were giving the kittens their fluids and looking after the mother cat. And I was showing them around a bit, and they seemed very puzzled by what was happening here. And I said, well, what's the matter? You seem very puzzled by something. And they looked at each other and they said to me, so where do all these animals come from? And I said, I was kind of surprised by this. I said, well, they come from humane societies and shelters who can't, look after them for very long. So they said, so why do they have to come here? And I said, well, obviously, at the shelters, they have to be killed after a few days. And they looked at me in this complete horror. And they said, you mean in this country they kill homeless pets? And I said, well, yeah. And they said, in our country, it is illegal to kill a homeless animal. And I looked at them, and they looked at me, and we were both, our jaws were both dropping, mine at what goes on in Germany, and theirs at what goes on here. And you begin to realize then that everything that you thought was this kind of necessary situation that you couldn't help, and this is just the way it is, and killing homeless animals in shelters is just one of those, quotes, necessary evils. And you think, well, it really doesn't have to be like that at all.
Animal welfare really began in 1824 in England when one of my personal heroes, a man called William Wilberforce, who was one of the leaders in the campaign to abolish slavery throughout the British Empire and the slave trade beyond it. And also he campaigned against child labor in factories and got the Factory Acts passed. A major figure in making Victorian Britain much more civilized. He also turns his attention to cruelty to animals.
England had had it before the States did. But an aristocrat, Henry Berg, I think his name was, in 1866, saw the horses being beaten that were pulling carts and starved. So he brought it before the legislature, and they passed the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. The American Society, ASPCA, started then, and he got laws enacted.
It was in the late 1800s, actually, and a woman was listening to a mother who continually abused her daughter in another apartment day after day, week after week, and she had called the police, tried every avenue she could to help that little girl.
There were no laws covering the abuse of children, your own children, and they invoked the ASPCA ruling, the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and applied that to children, and then they passed the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children, the SPCC.
So the first child abuse case was brought to court by the SPCA, and so I think we're probably a little bit better with our children now than we were then.
A lot of people don't understand the difference between animal welfare, and that is, on the animal welfare side, people believe that it is appropriate for people to utilize and keep animals so long as they do so humanely and responsibly. And on the animal rights side, they believe that there is no way that people can utilize animals responsibly and humanely, that people and animals, at least in some categories, are equal, and that people should not use animals for any purpose.
An animal welfarist would say, well, I don't like animal testing, but if you're going to do it, you should make sure the animal doesn't suffer. Okay, an animal rights person would say, screw you, you have no right to invade and abuse an animal to gain any of this information unless that animal willingly jumped up on the table to volunteer. And I'm sure that's not going to be happening.
Animal rights people say that they don't have a home, they shouldn't be allowed to live. They're not happy. This is cruel to keep animals for life when they don't have a family. Well, let me tell you, they have a family. These are all our kids. And the problem between animal welfare people is, don't you dare tell me how to raise my kids. And so, mostly we don't get along because we all have different ideas on how to raise our kids.
In terms of how animals are treated in Hollywood, in a large respect, they are treated better than the actors. With Brokeback Mountain, there was all people saying, you know, one side saying, you know, the sheeps were put up in hotel suites. The other side saying the sheeps were, you know, were terribly abused, and the other people saying the sheeps were all CGI. What are you talking about? So I mean, that's a perfect example, though, of the kind of attention that is paid to this, and and the controversy that will immediately crop up should anything go wrong.
In essence, it's replaced the duty of care of man towards the animal with the idea that animals are morally equivalent to humans, and that therefore the sort of actions that would be justified in stopping cruelty to humans are also justified in stopping cruelty to animals.
Animal liberation is not a campaign. It is not a struggle. It is a war. It's an all-out bloody war in which the countless hundreds of millions of casualties have so far all been on one side. How can we allow that to continue? We have a power, but we should use that power.
And of course it permits everything. No action can be immoral if it's conducted with such a warrant. One should watch out. There you have immediately the incubation pool of fanaticism and terrorism. The absolutist mentality, the people who know they're right. And whose propaganda is by deed, not by argument.
Case in point, Dr. Jerry Vlasic, practicing trauma surgeon in Los Angeles, who also acts as a spokesperson for several extreme animal rights groups.
I said, listen, I think that tactically, if you were to take animal experimenters and if you were to ask them to stop experimenting on animals, but if they didn't, and if you explained to them why they should and they still didn't, and you told them to stop and they still didn't, that if you stopped them physically, whether you killed them or otherwise stopped them, then I think that you wouldn't have, and I think the quote goes something like, you wouldn't have to kill more than 10 or 15 of these animal abusing research scientists to get a lot of people to start thinking about, do I really want to do animal research?
How many doctors have chosen not to go into the medical research field because they're afraid of being assassinated by a Jerry Vlasic?
I had the choice of doing animal research or doing non-animal research, and if it was hazardous to my health to do animal research, I would have done non-animal research, and it would have been the same.
Is it possible that the person who is best equipped to cure AIDS has decided not even to take that first step because they're afraid?
For instance, if somebody came up and started kicking your dog on the street, and you say, hey, man, don't kick my dog, and the guy says, you know, he weighs 200 pounds and he's a weightlifter, and he says, I'm going to kick your dog if I want to kick your dog, then I think most people would say that you would have the right to stop him from kicking your dog. If you had to hit him with a 2x4 or something, then that would be certainly morally justifiable. And so I'm just extending that one more step. Here are people who are abusing animals. They're getting paid to abuse animals. You ask them to stop. They don't want to stop. You tell them to stop. They still don't want to stop. Then you stop them and using whatever means are necessary. I think that's a morally defensible argument.
These labs, these fur farms, these factory farms, these stores, they weren't built for any other purpose than to kill animals and to market an impression and market oppression and to profit from the misery of animals and to profit from the exploitation of the earth. And so in that way, there's no purpose for that building on this planet. This is a crude incendiary device. It is a simple plastic jug, which you fill with gasoline and oil. You put in a sponge, which is soaked also with flammable liquid, and I couldn't find an incense stick, but this represents that. You put the incense stick in here, you light it, you place it. Underneath the weapon of mass destruction, you light the incense stick, sandalwood works nice, and you destroy the profits that are brought about through animal and earth abuse. That's about $2. There's no place for it in what it does. So the only thing properly that we could do was destroy it by fire.
It started as a parade of people carrying signs and displaying their voices.
This week, activists vomited on an HLS display table at a pharmacological conference in San Francisco on Monday and then turned over tables yesterday. SHAC members and supporters rioted in Little Rock, Arkansas last October during a weekend of action.
The apparent targets two insurance companies that do business with a British laboratory, Huntington, that tests products on animals.
Police began arresting people. Now, many of the protesters are not
insurance companies that do business with a British laboratory, Huntington, that tests products on animals.
They force Splenda down the throats of beagles.
That even when you go into a store and you see a bottle of something that says this product was not tested on animals, what that really means is that that product specifically wasn't tested on animals, but every ingredient that goes into the manufacture of the product had to be tested on animals. As a matter of fact, it's a federal law.
Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty was formed for one explicit purpose: to shut down Huntington Life Sciences.
The Kevin Jonas that I know is a very brilliant, smart person, very meek, very small man, non-threatening. To hear him described as a animal rights terrorist is almost laughable because, again, tax dollars at work. If that man's a threat, I don't know what they're going to do when they find a real one.
My name's Kevin Jonas, and I am a 10-year veteran of the animal rights movement. I've been the president of Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty USA for the past few years before I had to resign because of this current indictment. And Josh and I and 5 others are currently under federal indictment in the District of New Jersey for violations of the Animal Enterprise Protection Act right now. We're going to court on February 6th to meet these charges that we feel are very constitutionally flawed and charges that have to be defended against and ultimately beaten.
My name is Josh. I grew up in Oregon, and I guess kind of the areas I grew up in were my initial inspiration for becoming involved in animal rights and environmental activism. I lived kind of in the heart of the Willamette Valley, and so I was surrounded on all sides by mountains, grasslands, streams, forests, kind of the whole shebang. And so growing up in those areas and basically having the contact that I had with animals and with natural beauty made me want to fight very hard to protect it. So from the time I was 16, I've been involved, and here I am as an indicted terrorist.
Look, the shack movement is very interesting just because it's so violent and so disturbing. It's sort of a special interest subset of the Animal Liberation Front.
Don't ask for animal liberation. Just take it.
It's very much like the abortion movement. You know, they had the websites where they had the abortion doctors listed and their home addresses, and then, you know, all kinds of horrible statements about what these people had done. It's exactly the same operation.
I want you to look at yourself in the mirror. You're a tremendous threat to the status quo.
These are people who believe so strongly that testing medicines and new drug therapies on animals is so wrong that you literally have to beat up the people who are involved in the work.
I turned to find 3 individuals with balaclavas and what certainly looked like pickaxe handles or something of that nature. So I got quite a severe beating across my arms and shoulders and a very nasty gash on the head.
Activism in this country, the violent side of animal activism, really took a turn for the worse with the shack movement. And if somebody doesn't put a stop to it, either with new laws or with some effective prosecutions, it's just a matter of time before the whole movement starts to say, hey, who cares what's right or wrong? Let's look at what works.
If the state keep closing in on legitimate protest and making it illegal and dangerous to demonstrate lawfully, people are going to go to the furthest extreme.
Killing
and
people.
The furthest extreme, absolutely, is to take the life of somebody like Brian Cass.
Shack is, by and large, a movement. It's in 18 different countries. Anybody that demonstrates against Huntington Life Sciences can say, I did this as a part of a shack campaign.
And he will not get away with it.
Shack USA, however, was a website and it was a newsletter disseminating information, reporting on other people's protest activities, cheerleading some of it, rah-rah. Some of it was really cocky and smart-ass. And that's really kind of why a lot of people in the U.S. loved the Shack campaign, is because it wasn't afraid to raise its middle finger to the FBI and the threat of lawsuits. It was young, it was energetic, and it was angry.
I mean, you had this incredible coming together of all different ages, all different groups of people.
What's controversial about the Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty campaign is that we're pretty brazen and we've employed a campaign tactic common in a lot of political movements called name and shame.
Your queen! Your fault! Your country! Your fault! Your money! Your fault!
You know, the companies that we're protesting against, they have 50,000 employees. They have 30-floor skyscrapers. When we hold our demonstrations, when we stand outside of a 30-story building made of glass and mortar with our signs, we're not going to impact many people. The people that you need to get the message out to are these executives that control these companies, the CEO, the president, the VP. All of them have home addresses, all in the telephone book.
You know, what you really have here is defamation for dollars with these animal rights organizations. You know, if you had a friend who was accused of molesting a child, what would your reaction to that friend be? It would be to move away a little bit. And that's really what they do. They vilify these people in such dreadful ways that even people who've known them think, my God.
We will never compromise! All your hiding, all your lies!
I certainly don't have any desire to, go to somebody's home and humiliate them. But at the end of the day, if they've proven themselves to be absolutely resistant to your message, if they can't be affected by the footage of these beagles being, punched in the face, or primates being dissected while they're still alive, and you get sick after a while of seeing them hide behind their layers and layers of assistants and secretaries and security, at the end of the day, sometimes you have to go to their home or else they're not going to hear your message. You're going to be ignored, and 500 animals a day are going to continue dying inside of HLS.
Who is
He's
this?
an executive for Bank of America.
Okay, and what is Bank of America?
Bank of America is the owner of a company called Columbia Management, and Columbia Management invests in Huntington Life Sciences.
So he lives in this building? Yeah, do you know which apartment?
Are we ready? Because we're probably going to move pretty quickly here.
Stop the murder! Stop the pay!
Jeffrey Walker is to blame!
Corporate scum!
Leave town!
Terrorist!
Leave town!
Puppy killer!
Leave town!
I don't know where any animal researcher or anybody that is involved in an animal enterprise gets off feeling threatened by somebody like Josh and I.
And they say they're not violent. Oh no, they're not violent. They're not inciting anybody to do anything. Well, here's a matchbook that they hand out. Strike a match, it says, and it's a picture of an Animal Liberation Front masked guy on the front. You open up the matchbook and here's the name and address of a biomedical research company. You can't do this because you're setting this environment up where you say, here's the information, now go get them. Somebody's gonna go get them. There are enough knuckleheads out there who want to either become a martyr to the movement or want to be famous, want their 15 minutes on CNN. Somebody's going to do this.
Martin Luther King once said that I'm only as powerful as the guy standing behind me in the shadows with a Molotov cocktail in his hands.
I don't think that's how you educate people. And I think that's how you alienate people.
Wake up, puppy killer! It's our mission to finish you off, Huntington, and all you filthy, scummy workers! 500 animals a day are killed at HLS because of your friend
A lot of people who are attracted to this movement are younger people, and they don't have a full grasp on tactics and strategies. And you have to understand that when you're pushing what's considered by the establishment to be a radical agenda, I mean, what's a radical agenda? Not killing animals to eat them is a radical agenda in our country. You have to understand that you're going up against some very violent opposition.
He's got a shotgun?
He's got a shotgun.
Who will not hesitate to destroy your life. So people should be fully aware of that and know what they're getting into. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I think, they go into these things without a full realization of what the consequences are for their actions. And then when they're arrested, they're actually shocked.
Does it work what they do? I don't know. Maybe it all works, and maybe none of it works. And all I can do is say, look at the kill rates at our shelters, and they're going down. And maybe something's working. Something's working.
It's time to spread the word. Let the voice be heard. All of us, one of us, all of us dominate and take the motherfucking world. Mass prediction, unification, breathing life into our lungs. Every creed and every God to give us depth for strength. Talk with the young to hate one another. It's time to have a new reign of power. Make God universal.
And the techniques that the Shack USA was advocating and spreading the word about were effective. And I think the government said, hey, wait a minute, we can't be having our corporation's profits threatened by a group of people who are doing something out of compassion and aren't looking to make a profit. So how do we hurt them? And how do we hurt them? We arrest them and we put them in jail, and that's what's happened.
We were arrested with helicopters over our head or over our house, a dozen agents with guns and pistols and battering rams and a whole herd of cars bringing us down, issuing press releases. Well, within 4 hours of all of this, we're out on the streets.
If they were truly terrorists, domestic terrorists, and they were the scariest thing that we have to offer here in the United States, why are they letting them out of jail? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know why they let us out. I think perhaps the government knows very well that their charges against us are so constitutionally fraught. And it's going to be such a challenge for them to meet their legal burden and demonstrate that we did the things we did and it's not constitutionally protected.
These people never harmed anybody.
So how can you call them terrorists? That's what I don't understand. Yes, they're stupid. They're using bad tactics, but they're not, I mean, they're not Osama fucking bin Laden. Excuse me, they're not.
The term terrorist carries a lot of weight, you know, and it's a pretty horrible thing to be labeled a terrorist for talking about sending black faxes and, you know, doing home demonstrations.
Did I get your permission to photograph me?
I don't have to have your permission.
Yes,
I'm
you
a
do.
public citizen. Get your hands off of me.
Don't
You want to go to
photograph me.
jail for assault?
The police are coming to get you out of here right now. I'm not assaulting you.
You touched me. That's assault.
I'm trying to get your camera out of my face.
You're the one who stepped into my camera.
There's nobody here that has anything to do with this, and I want you to leave.
Thank you.
Puppy killer! Puppy killer! You want to fucking hit me?
Don't you touch
fucking hit me?
Yeah, I know. I just really hate to see this old guy arrested, but I mean, he was an asshole, that's true. They get a big kick out of it when we get arrested.
Back to your question, though, about whether the tactics that Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty uses, if they're comparable to what the FBI uses, I would say absolutely not. I mean, there's never been a target of the Shack campaign who's woken up with a pistol in their face.
The New York Stock Exchange, Josh and I didn't really have too much to do with it because we're under indictment and we can't really be involved in any political protest activity for fear of violating our pretrial conditions of release. And so for the last 2 years, the government's had essentially like a gag on Josh and I and our co-defendants.
After all, it looked like just another day here yesterday, but 45 minutes before this, something entirely out of the ordinary had happened away from the camera. Representatives of Huntington Life Sciences, who'd been welcomed heartily for their planned flotation, suddenly told it was postponed while the exchange considered certain, quotes, concerns. The business of animal testing increasingly difficult. HLS was already forced off the London Stock Exchange in 2001, but Huntington's plans to raise capital in America now looking uncertain.
It's the first time in the history of the New York Stock Exchange that a company was ever forced to delist or forced to not list based on political activism.
They have to face us. They have to answer to us, everyday common people on the street.
It was impossible for us to get a bank account in this country or insurance coverage in this country. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of shareholders as well.
You know, there's a reason why Congress is having hearings about animal rights activists, and it's not because we're the #1 domestic terrorist threat in America. You know, it's because we've shaken the foundation of some big companies, and now we have to deal with that.
The day that I knew that our tactics were effective was the day that the New York Police Department used our tactics to take their message to Mayor Bloomberg by doing a home demonstration at his house late one night, which they tell us all the time is illegal, but it's not.
I don't think you could do that. Yes, we can. One struggle, one fight. Tough shit.
Listen to me a minute. Keep the camera down. Move over
You hit
there.
my camera. You
Move over
assaulted
there.
me.
Get over there.
Why are you assaulting me?
That is the demonstration area, not here.
Look at Cindy Sheehan. She's doing a home demonstration against the president. The tactics clearly work.
I think that that's really the wonderful thing about Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty, and I think that is why the government fears us. Because imagine what would happen in this country if other movements, if the environmental movement, if the feminist movement, the gay rights movement, if they began to act with this same power and tenacity. I think that we would see massive change in this country.
Don't touch my son, you're assaulting me. You're assaulting me.
If they want to label me a terrorist for stopping what I feel is harm to my fellow people, to the environment, to animals, and you want to label me a terrorist, then I embrace the word and I'm proud to be a terrorist.
People talk dismissively about, oh, animal rights terrorism. Oh, that's not terrorism. They're not knocking down buildings and killing 3,000 people. Well, let me tell you something. Terrorism is the use of force or the threat of force to try to change people's behavior, to try to exert your power over them politically or in the way they live their lives. They want people to change their behavior out of fear. That's terrorism, plain and simple.
Our job's been easier over the last few years because the public relations garbage that these people put out, you know, calling us high seas pirates and eco-terrorists, actually works in our favor. Scares the hell out of the people that we're opposing. And when they see us, they run. And so when we just recently encountered the Japanese whaling fleet in Antarctica, it was really every time we caught them, they would run. And we were able to prevent them from killing whales for over 15 days, and we chased them for 4,000 miles because they were afraid of us.
Oriental Bluebird, or should I say the SS Whale Meat, please remove yourself from these waters. You're in violation of international conservation regulations. We're acting in accordance with the United Nations World Charter for Nature and implementing these regulations. You're in a whale sanctuary and you're assisting in illegal activity. Remove yourself from these waters immediately.
If I ever want to go meet a terrorist, I'll get a job at Huntington Life Sciences.
The shack kids, and a lot of them are just kids. They're just idealistic idiots. But they're marketing their story with this romantic notion that they're being prosecuted for speaking their mind. Nonsense. You know, in the same way that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, that's not free speech.
Well, we're having a big art auction for the Shack 7. We hope to raise a ton of money.
And there's tons of people involved in this benefit who don't even care about animal rights issues. It's just, I think a lot of people are starting to recognize that it really is a free speech issue.
We didn't play the animal rights thing as much as we should have, but it's got a bad meaning to a lot of people, so we played the free speech, which is more important than anything, actually.
Slippery slope. If they go down, then the next set of people go down, and then...
We're here to protect our First Amendment rights.
I'd say the biggest reason I'm here, I mean, before more than just animal rights, it's the First Amendment issues that are at stake.
I'm just here for the ladies, man. The vegan ladies, for sure. Dad and I might look at some art, but I don't really plan on buying any. But I would, because it would be good for that. You know, give good people money, and then I might get ladies.
Walk on!
I'm not into doing direct action anymore. I was when I was young, and I couldn't really get in trouble for it. I'm not going to do that anymore, so I figured I would go more conventional ways and legal ways to raise money and make people aware.
A lot of people have done quite a bit to support us.
Last weekend, we were part of a benefit for the Shack 7 that raised around $600, which isn't a big figure, but considering, you know, it's just a small hardcore show with punk kids and, you know, just a small community venue, $600 is a lot to raise, and we were really happy to be a part of that.
It's just so touching that people care enough to give up their money and their time and to expend so much energy on us. I don't know if any of you here tonight have heart problems or are easily scared, but I'm actually going to recreate the act of terrorism that I am facing 3 years in prison for right now.
He's gonna take off his pants!
Actually, what happened was I was standing in a classroom at the University of Washington where somebody had booked a speaking engagement. Later, I found out that the person who booked it was actually an FBI agent. And 11 people were in attendance, and so obviously I was going to be able to influence a mass of terrorists in that 11-person crowd. And what I talked about was a tactic that's been used by the animal rights movement. It's a tactic of electronic civil disobedience, where you take 3 sheets of paper and get ready, because this is the terrorism right here. You take 3 sheets of black paper and you tape them end to end to end. And one end of those goes into a fax machine, and you dial the number of, say, any corporate exploiter that you might have in mind, or a financial institution that's supporting, you know, animal cruelty. You dial the fax, and once it begins going through, you take the back end and you tape it to the front end, so it runs in a continuous loop. Look out, Osama bin Laden. Josh Harper's here, and he's coming for your toner and paper.
Tonight's benefit, besides being a benefit for our legal defense fund, is also kind of our last hurrah, our last party. And so I'm kind of drunk, so forgive me a little, straight edge people. It's not just Josh and I and Jake and Lauren and Andy and Darius and the corporation that are on trial on February 6th in the god-awful state of New Jersey. Forgive me, people from New Jersey. Shame on you, though. There's never been a more important time to be passionate, to be angry, to goddamn be active. So by all means, bid on some art. Help us out. God knows we need it. You want to buy me a drink too? I'm up in the front. It's kind of been an isolating experience. You feel like I'm the only one going through this. And you realize when I stand up in New Jersey on February 6th, I don't stand alone. Behind me are hundreds of people that believe in what I'm saying or believe I have the right to say what I'm saying. If the government thought like indicting us was going to put a stop to this, they just kicked a hornet's nest. This has made more people come out than ever before, than anything Josh and I could have ever done with our big mouths and our Abbott and Costello routine. The government did for us. They thought they'd decapitate the monster and they just made it bigger.
They gave us a platform to talk from. And no one gave a damn about us until they made us credible.
Yeah.
When they said we were a threat, suddenly people started listening to what we had to say. So thanks, FBI.
That's awesome. Jeff Farrar rocks. He's a special agent. We're quite fond of.
He's a special agent.
I think that the ALF, the Animal Liberation Front, is probably, has in recent years, probably been one of the most effective, if not the most effective element of the animal rights movement.
What's ALF?
This is Anne Berlin, speaking on behalf of the ALF, here to answer Kurt Johnson's questions about our movement and where it's going. The Animal Liberation Front consists of small autonomous groups of people all over the world who carry out direct action according to the ALF guidelines. Because non-human animals lack political power, speciesism will be harder to overcome than sexism or racism. And there will always be a need for people to take direct action to protect animals from abuse, just as there will always be a need for people to intervene, regardless of the consequences, in all other forms of domestic violence. But we'll know that our work is nearly complete when the public's understanding of animal sentience reaches the point where people accept that violence is just as acceptable to use in defense of animals as it is in defense of human beings. Although the ALF has always been underground, the USA and the British government's recent terrorist label may be a sign that the animal liberation movement can no longer be ignored.
I used to think ALF was that puppet on television. So I was like, oh my God, the puppet's going after them again.
It is common for the ALF to keep possible targets under close surveillance. When the farm closed, ex-Shamrock employees were unknowingly under close scrutiny at all times. These specialist vehicles were pulled to France, where it was discovered that they had been purchased by HLS to import primates. The ALF struck again. The specialist vehicles were destroyed by fire.
The Animal Liberation Front actually also came from the United Kingdom. A guy named Ronnie Lee, way back in the 70s, had a little run-in with the law over some arguments he had about animal rights. And even though he started out as more or less a peaceful kind of protester that would do just the stand around with signs and shout and get arrested and that sort of thing, he had some personal experiences that led him to believe that violence was really necessary to do what they wanted to do, which was essentially get rid of all animal enterprise. So what he figured out, though, was the model that we've seen ever since, and that is if you just do the crimes, the public has no idea what's going on because it's just a scattered kind of, here's an arson, there's a big vandalization of something or another. And he figured out that you have to have an above ground, not connected with, and can't be criminally prosecuted for what it's doing, mouthpiece for why you did the crime.
Whenever there's an underground action, we tend to issue press releases and talk to the media about why those actions occurred and what the thinking was behind them, what the ideology and philosophy is.
I'm starting to receive lawsuits in the name of the Animal Liberation Front, and I keep having to explain to lawyers that I don't know who these people are. I don't participate in the activities. I just report them. It's no different than the press. If the press is reporting a rape, are they responsible for the rape? Do they speak for the rapist? No, they don't. So all I'm doing is passing information along, a conduit of information. And it's an important conduit of information because these people can't speak for themselves. And someone needs to explain why these actions are occurring, why these people feel so strongly about animal liberation that they're willing to put their own lives and their own liberty in jeopardy in order to accomplish a goal.
The mechanism to keep the above-ground people from being prosecuted actually is pretty intelligent. They figured out what the rules of evidence are, and if the above-ground people only receive copies of, let's say, stolen documents or photographs of the crime instead of the documents themselves, if they don't have anything that's stolen but only copies of it, a prosecutor can't touch them in the United States.
You know, ALF is not like a command post somewhere, like a terrorist organization. ALF is the spirit in America that probably existed around 1772, you know, just before the big one. And it's a widespread feeling that there is an injustice. And sometimes the only way to cure injustice is to take direct action.
The Animal Liberation Front can be anybody at any time. If you abide by 4 guidelines and your actions are guided by your conscience to help animals, you're the Animal Liberation Front. The Animal Liberation Front consists of anybody from school teachers to clergy to lay people to lawyers to doctors to students, anybody that goes out in an autonomous cell and they commit a so-called crime to help animals. That's the Animal Liberation Front.
We're not a highly organized guerrilla unit. I wish we were, but we're not. We're people just like you. You know, some people say, "Oh, we're doctors, lawyers." I'm like, "Well, that's not the ALF I was in." You know, we're shoplifters, college students.
Good evening, Joe Smith. What are you doing tonight?
Nothing.
In over 25 years that the Animal Liberation Front has been active both in the U.S. and the U.K., they have never injured or harmed any animal, human or non-human.
Well, we don't know that, because one of the things we do know is that they wait a couple of days to send the communique saying this was an ELF or ALF crime just to make sure nobody got hurt. And if somebody did, we'd never know about it.
Psychologically, the ALF people have it entirely backward what the influence on the public is going to be. And getting them out of the way is going to be a good thing for the cause.
Well, let me rebut that, because in the early days, you know, in the early 1980s, the ALF was involved in going into laboratories and getting evidence of wrongdoing against animals. And so it was focused on finding out these atrocities that were then taken to the media.
The raiders believe the pictures are proof animal experimentation is inherently cruel. Oh my God. 7 people were arrested in the raid and charged with burglary. The tape was smuggled out of the building and distributed to the news media.
So that was really the focus of the ALF, and then it sort of changed because there wasn't any one ALF. People were like formed their own groups, these cells. Some people got into vandalism, which was a real turnoff, and that became to the public because when you have vandalism and the media shows up, and then all you see is the trash stuff and the graffiti and all, then that becomes the message of the media.
Vandalism in the psychology laboratories caused extensive damage, and tonight Johnson County authorities have the building quarantined as they try to clean up toxic chemicals.
They're basically working for the other side, because what they're doing is they're removing animal experimentation from an area where parts of the world where there's some transparency, some regulation, some regular governmental inspection. You have freedom of speech and press, so you can protest if things are not being done as they should. And the work that used to be done by outfits like Huntington in places like New Jersey and England is now being done in places like Ghana, Pakistan, South Korea, where you have limited freedoms, if any.
No doubt there will be some companies that will go offshore. However, they still have to trade on the stock exchange. They still have to do that in New York City. We're here, and we're going to stay here. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing is that, for every country, there will be activists in those countries, and then we can always learn to speak Chinese and go there. We're not afraid to follow them where they go.
I'd like to see Ingrid Newkirk or Camille Hankins or Kevin Jonas or Wayne Pacelli try to organize peaceful protests in communist China. That would be a hoot.
Really, if you want to achieve a reduction in the animal suffering involved in experimentation, what you really want to do is put it in the places where it's under a microscope, where it's under constant supervision, like England and the United States and a couple other countries in Western Europe.
I have a problem with the ALF being on the terrorist list above Al-Qaeda. And by the way, when President Bush or others are speaking about terrorists, he's not mentioning that it's the ALF.
Or animal activists.
Yeah, or animal activists that are on the list. He's just mentioning terrorists. So we think he is doing his job.
I think the American people were tricked into this new form of police service through, where our country is such fear of the animal rights movement, and the #1 threat to domestic terrorism is the animal rights movement. And they're, all over the world, this is touted on the front lines of papers. America deems the #1 threat to U.S. security the bunny huggers, And so most people in the world are taking that with a joke. But it's real. We were watching people go to jail. The hidden agenda, I think, is that they are worried about us for some reason. But I stand on the side of a road with a video camera with my face just like this. And if I'm what they think terrorists are, there's no reason why. This explains to me why terrorists get away with it.
Fortunately, this nation has superb professionals in law enforcement, intelligence, the military, and Homeland Security.
We had a day in this little bucolic town in the mountains where suddenly we had Homeland Security jeeps everywhere, and everyone in town, knowing each other as they do, is like, what's going on? And we thought maybe we had some Arab terrorist on the loose here in town, and who would stand out because it's rather a white population. And there were also helicopters going over the town. And these Homeland Security guys were omnipresent. Well, it turned out they were here to protect us from this terrible terrorist group called the Buffalo Field Campaign, which is a lot of very sweet, nice young boys who can barely grow beards yet.
They have Homeland Security escorting the buffalo to slaughterhouses. We have police cars that are Homeland Security written on the side, escorting bison up to 500 miles on the slaughterhouses.
Everyone was just horrified and disgusted that it had really come to this. It's so pathetic. It's such a misuse of
There's an expression around here called "more money than brains." That
More
reminded
money
me.
than brains. And the town was really crawling with them. They lost a lot of, there was not a lot of support for the Homeland Security group that day. Everyone was just shaking their heads and couldn't believe it was going on.
You know, all you hear is the Animal Rights Movement or the Earth Liberation Front. These are the terrorist organizations. I've never once heard the pro-lifers being referred to as a terrorist organization, yet they murder abortion doctors, they burn and torture or blow up abortion clinics, and they stand out in front of abortion clinics and harass the poor women that are making the hardest choice of their life. They're not terrorists? No, they're not terrorists because the GOP party endorses the hell out of that issue.
When 9/11 went down, our editorial went to press right after 9/11, predicted basically that what's going to happen is that as the government fails to drag in Osama bin Laden and so forth, they'll turn on the easier targets, and those will be the animal rights activists. These tools will give them the means to bring in anybody who's doing arson, pipe bombing, and all that sort of thing.
What they're doing with the animal and the earth people, I think that they're going to go after the peace activists next. I think that any organization that has a viewpoint that's contrary to the government viewpoint is going to be looked at as the enemy, and I think they're going to be tarred and feathered with this brush of being called terrorist.
In fact, a one-arm woman who helps me with feral cat trappings, she's being investigated, interrogated by the FBI. I mean, she tells me they're very handsome, which is nice to know. The group I identify the most with,
ALF.
yeah, is ALF. Now, I don't believe in doing anything illegal, so FBI, I know you're watching this. We don't believe in that, and we use the name the Kitty Liberation Front because we felt as strong as them, but it was also to make fun of ourselves. We are the Kitty Liberation Front, not to be confused with the ALF.
Yeah, right.
A little bit more jiggling, please.
Okay.
That gets the ratings.
Learning through our own experiences really is intimidation versus inspiration. It's better to inspire.
Fear and annoyance are amazing tools for getting people to do what you want.
We cannot do that through attacking, and it's amazing.
But I understand where ALF comes from, and I have no problems with them because they're not hypocrites and they are what they are.
There are three things in human life which are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind.
We started getting reports of animals being dumped here in Ahoskie, all of them right here behind the Piggly Wiggly shopping center. That kind of started the whole thing. The dogs and cats, they were partially frozen. There was rumors got out about the local Chinese place using the dogs for food. Really hurt his business tremendously.
There are 2 PETA employees who right now are facing a total of 50 felonies for animal cruelty and some other charges in North Carolina.
They would come down to this area, Ahoskie, and pick up some animals and take them back to their place in Norfolk, where we assumed that they were trying to find homes for them.
Less than an hour later, all the animals, 31 of them in all, were dead. Killed in the back of a PETA-owned van driving down the highway. And then these 2 had the gall to put the bodies in a trash bag, throw them in a dumpster behind a grocery store.
I'm just devastated, and all that I wanted to do was help the animals in the community.
Hinkle and Cook's boss, who is PETA's founder, is defending her employees. At a news conference shortly after the arrests, Ingrid Newkirk did call the dumping of bodies, quote, hideous, but said nothing about the alleged deception used to obtain the animals.
What she did was wrong with the bodies, but she didn't cause suffering or pain or misery or anything like that.
That's the ethical treatment of animals that PETA stands for, apparently.
I was paged by the police department that afternoon, and they asked me to do an autopsy on one of the animals that they had found in this van, and it was a 6-month-old puppy that appeared to be just in absolute perfect health.
It's amazing to me that Ingrid has pictures of her with puppies and all this when their big thing is euthanizing.
Or not owning pets.
As our regular animal shelters know, actually caring for animals doesn't make you a lot of money. It's very hard to raise money saying, oh, we're going to care for the animals. But raising money saying, we're going to stick the screws to McDonald's, boy, for some reason, people pay for that. You know, PETA's really very shrewd and savvy marketers.
PETA is the most retrograde organization there is out there on dog and cat issues right across the boards. They really have misled the public grossly on their positions on companion animals. And the business in North Carolina is probably about the 15th time in 15 years or thereabouts that something similar has been brought to our attention involving PETA. This time, finally, somebody's going to trial.
So why don't they try to find animals homes? They tell us they're going to try to find homes, but they took and killed them. And then after this came to light, we found out that Norfolk up there, Norfolk PETA group, finds homes for about 13% of their animals, when the other humane societies in that area tend to find homes for 85, 75, or 65% of their animals. So they're finding homes for very few and basically killing a great deal of what they bring in.
This is PETA's animal record for 2003 from the state of Virginia. PETA in that year killed 1,911 animals. Now, they spayed and neutered a lot. They spayed and neutered about 6,000 or so. But they took in 2,225 animals. They killed 1,911 of them. What is that, about 85%, 84%? I'm just flabbergasted that PETA kills animals. You wouldn't think it's true, but it is.
I mean, it is sort of a death cult, too. You have to understand that the premise of what they do at PETA is we have to kill them to save them. Because people are bad, these animals are in trouble, so we have to take care of them. We have to do society's dirty work.
We don't take that too kindly here in northeastern North Carolina.
Well, the internal contradictions, the people-hating aspect of animal rights activists is obvious. Look, we all hate people. I mean, you know, anybody who's exposed to a lot of people hates people. You know, there's got to be a better outlet for this. Can't you just be rude, you know, or acerbic, you know, or drink too much or something?
It was very, very disturbing when I saw that PETA was trying to put a spin saying that they were teaching humane euthanasia.
If PETA is nothing else, it's the master of spin. PETA can take its worst press day and turn it into a victory for animals. And I think it'll do that with North Carolina.
We haven't gone down there to say, hello, we're an adoption agency. We're not. We are the shelter of last resort.
You know, it's not something I would personally do, but compassionately euthanize them. I don't like how they were very disrespectful to bodies afterwards, but those animals had a much grimmer fate awaiting them.
What's so interesting about that organization is that they will talk about ending suffering all the time. They will never talk about saving a life. And if you read the website, on the website it says the kindest thing you can do for a cat that doesn't have a home is take it into a shelter and have it humanely euthanized.
You know, if you're killing an animal, I don't care if it's to beautiful music. I don't care if it's with pretty floral wallpaper. I don't care if they're killed on velvet sheets. They're killed. And that is not our right. It is not ours.
And I say it's not euthanasia, it's killing, and hopefully one day it'll be considered murder.
The whole ethic of animal rights was probably best summed up by PETA's president, Ingrid Newkirk. And she said in a speech that if anybody wonders what's with all these reforms that we're pushing, here's the goal. It's 3 words.
Total animal liberation, and the day when everyone believes that animals are not ours to eat, not ours to wear, not ours to experiment, and not ours for entertainment or any other exploitive purpose.
It means you don't get to eat meat, period. It means no milk, no circuses, no rodeos, no zoos, no aquariums. It means no wool, no fur, no leather, no silk. This tie is a no-no, apparently. PETA has a vice president named Mary Beth Sweetland. This woman has been with PETA for 15, 20 years. She's a lifer in the movement. She's got insulin diabetes. She has to inject herself every day in order to survive and live. Now, until just a few years ago, this insulin was actually an animal product. And the technology and the insulin itself was tested on animals.
You yourself are an insulin diabetic, and insulin is something that would never have been brought to the public without animal testing. How do you reconcile that, and isn't that a little hypocritical to say that all animal testing is bad science when you owe your own life to it?
This is David Martosco of the Center for Consumer Freedom. He receives millions of dollars from the tobacco company and the food industry to fight PETA. That's all he does is fight PETA.
If it weren't for animal testing, this woman wouldn't have survived half as long as she did. But she says she's not a hypocrite. Look up hypocrite in the dictionary. There's a little engraved picture of Mary Beth Sweetland right there on page 312. She's a huge hypocrite. And I think a lot of people in the animal rights movement will do that when it suits them. Pam Anderson, great example. Big PETA spokesperson. She's carrying on and complaining. Every time she loses a step in her career, she needs some free publicity. She calls up PETA and says, get me on a TV show, get me on a billboard, whatever. So we have, it's not that she's terrible to look at, but we have to listen to her complain about Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm tired of that. Pam Anderson's a huge hypocrite. Think about it. This is a woman who complains in letters to KFC about chickens that are bred, and I use her word, to be artificially top-heavy. Hello? Artificially top-heavy? Pam Anderson, line 1. This woman is artificial everything. Peroxide in the hair, tested on animals. Breast implants, tested on animals. She's even got collagen injections in her lips, which are animal tissue most of the time. Could you get a bigger hypocrite to endorse PETA?
When it comes down to it, we're all hypocrites. If we live on this planet, we're doing something that's with animal experimentation, eating meat sometime or other, doing something. So we have absolutely no right attacking someone. Example, when PETA goes after Jason Alexander for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then turns around and endorses Martha Stewart and puts this great big thing on the internet. We signed Martha Stewart for PETA, and she's cooking chicken every day.
It's a good thing.
It's giving a mixed message. I mean, it's like PETA is so much into trying to get a celebrity that they don't care about their message.
Growing up in Hollywood, you just want, God, they're all such goddamn narcissists.
I personally am someone who doesn't wear wool, leather, silk, or eat animals.
Sometimes I think they pick the organizations based on who's going to like them best and, give them the... Whose gala is gonna, am I gonna get to wear the best dress to?
I'm amazed at these intelligent celebrities that do research on movies.
PETA for one, which I strongly support.
I have been involved with PETA. I did a campaign or two for them.
I support PETA.
PETA, I do support PETA.
I'm very happy to be a part of PETA. PETA can blow me.
You'll see a celebrity endorse two different groups that actually contradict one another.
And so as long as celebrities are willing to attach their name to PETA and not think through what's going on there, PETA will continue to be regarded as an upfront, decent organization, which I'm not sure it is anymore.
I gotta applaud Beth Atrosky.
Oh, yeah.
Beth Atrosky.
Howard
I
Stern's
can't
girlfriend.
really name any other celebrity. They're very kind-hearted to do it, but Beth is like the only one that I can think of that does her research and she's hands-on.
After meeting the North Shore Animal League and going there on a regular basis and how it's a no-kill organization, I am so proud to offer my name and to be a spokesperson, to spread the word. And so many people attach their name on something, they don't really know anything about it. I know everything about this place, and there's not one thing about this place and I'm not proud to promote. Why do you make a donation?
Because I wanted to stop cruelty to animals.
Stop cruelty to animals.
As to why actors have such an affinity for animals, I think a lot of it has to do with, one, just if you're successful, you want to help out someone who's less successful than yourself, who's less well taken care of, and animals, certainly fall in that category. But I also think, too, that if you become an actor, you walked over glass at some point in your life. There's been a period where you've gone through something that would make you want to suffer the slings and arrows that it takes to become an actor. It's so hard, and much less become a successful actor.
I've fallen in love with so many.
If I were president, I would propose a constitutional amendment giving dogs and cats constitutional rights, as they couldn't be abused, they couldn't be killed, they couldn't be harmed any more than individual human beings could.
The cool thing about working with animals is they give 190 back
for the 10% of time or energy that any of us might have to give to them.
I mean, deep down, I think that most people love animals, and no one wants to be involved in animal cruelty and animal suffering.
And until we respect the animals, how can we respect one another?
No, it's an issue that's obviously like any good cause. It's just worth bringing the public's awareness to it.
I think if the celebrities knew the integral workings of certain organizations, they would not support them. I think most people wouldn't, especially with companion animals. I know that food animals are a whole different story, and that's a whole very sad, important story. But with companion animals, the American public does not want to see them die. They want them to live.
I find that anybody that I've ever shared the information of the realities of the fur industry always choose to go another route.
Her family is Kaplan Fur's like multi-million-dollar industry that which she denounced and they disowned her.
Yeah.
Kaplan Furs.
I come from furriers.
She comes from furriers.
I know, I don't talk about it.
And fortunately, we've discovered that it skips generations, I guess.
PETA, I think they do have a lot of good initiatives, but presenting something like this to a little child with a picture of what looks like a skinned fox, and this is a graphic picture that has made me blanch.
Your mommy kills animals? This is a PETA comic. They actually put this in the hands of children as young as 6 years old. Adults understand that this is humorous, it's supposed to be humorous. I'm reading from the back of this. There are terrible people who cause our furry friends to die every day, and guess what? One of those terrible people is your mommy. Your mommy kills animals. I bet you didn't know that. Are you kidding me?
Cute animal, formerly cute animal.
There will never, ever be a zero demand for fur. People will always want to wear fur. I mean, it's a huge billion-dollar industry.
You look very nice.
I moved to New York about 2 months ago, and I've never been in such a cold place in my life. I'm from Australia. I'm used to really warm temperatures. So I did bring a vintage fur, a rabbit fur jacket with me. And just talking to people around the city, a lot of them have said that they're actually quite terrified about saying that items that they are wearing are in fact real fur. And lots of them have said, I'll lie about it if anyone questions me about it.
Excuse me, is that fur you're wearing?
Yes. Yes. No. Yes. Am I supposed to say yes?
There was a man in my lobby this morning who was waiting to catch the bus with me. And I said to him, oh, what's your hat made from? And he took a look at me. This man's 6'6", but he looked at me like he was quite concerned. And he said, it's rabbit. And so we had a chat about it. I mentioned I'd written the piece, and he said, I was really thinking of telling you that it was fake fur because you never know who could be a bit of a crazy.
That is fucking disgusting. Did you kill it yourself? How do you feel about that? You still alive? I bet you have a nice cat at home too. Just getting that? You fucking pervert.
And I just decided a while ago that why should I have to lie about it? Why should anyone have to lie about it? The reaction was quite overwhelming. I did expect that I would get a lot of feedback, and I did expect that a lot of it would be negative. And I did meet with PETA. I did get a call from the organisation, and I did agree to meet one of their representatives. I wanted to give them the opportunity to say whatever they wanted to say. They showed me a video, and it wasn't pleasant to watch. And I cannot say that I was unmoved by it, because I was. But I also can't say that I went home and threw my items of fur from my wardrobe into the trash.
Mink farming is generally, our livelihood are these animals. So it really comes down to they're going to get food, they're going to get water, all the care, the best care that they're going to get is because it's our livelihood. We need these mink to be happy and healthy because otherwise we're not going to stay in business.
If this were a simple matter of a disagreement, if this were just simply an ideological conflict, then whatever, I'm willing to talk with anyone, I'm willing to debate with anyone. But when the physical reality of animal confinement comes into the picture, even if the welfare of these animals is, you know, relatively taken care of.
A mink is a very voracious carnivore, and when you release a couple of hundred of those things into a habitat, they very rapidly will clean out everything that is there for them to eat. And most of them will starve because they don't have enough fuel to get to where they can find adequate food and habitat.
My farm experienced a release, and it did horrendous damage to the ecosystem around the farm. We lost several thousands of dollars worth of exotic birds and pets when the mink were released. And most of the mink that did not return to the farm were just hit on the highway.
There's a lot of media hype when some of this stuff happens. When, let's say, a mink farmer fights back and calls the media, saying, you know, last night, you know, 2,000 of my mink were released, and starts giving some kind of BS about, oh, they were all run over by cars, or they can't survive in the wild. You know, that those comments are heard frequently, and the media likes to latch onto those comments. But what people need to understand is that something that's created by the opposition to put down the liberation.
The family has been affected. We had people taking pictures of our home and stuff when we're there. We've had people up taking pictures at my child's school. And I guess we've made it to the internet on a death list, including my 10-year-old.
The FBI said, well, don't let your kids open your mail. You know, there's razor blades floating out there, and so we still don't let our kids open their mail. And, you know, we screen our mail.
At the end of the day, I mean, obviously, I don't really want to cause harm to anyone. I don't relish the idea of taking away somebody's livelihood. I don't enjoy the thought that these people are going to have to, you know, suffer financially. But it becomes necessary. And I don't really know what to say. I'm not particularly apologetic about that.
This has been, by and large, the most non-violent political social justice movement ever.
Well, non-violent is a very gray term. No, nobody's walked up and shot me with a shotgun. However, they took $500,000 out of my family's mouth.
What I can say, though, from my part, is that these are animals who are slated to die regardless. The profit from their death is going to ensure that another generation fills those cages the next year. And so if an animal is released from a cage and they have a fighting chance at life, and somewhere along the way they get hit by a car, of course it's tragic. I mourn when any animal dies, but at least now there's no profit to be made from their death.
We've survived because people do want mink. It's a good industry, and we're not going to be scared and go away.
I just think it's selfish and lazy. I don't want to learn something new. You know, never mind that not only does my factory farm confine and cause misery for all these different lives.
You know, we're not trying to defend our industry because it doesn't really need defending.
You can't scare somebody to quit doing something. It doesn't work. I'm not going to keep my children home from school. I'm not going to sit in my house and behind an electric fence.
But they don't want to change. They're lazy. It pisses me off.
I would argue that it's not laziness.
We're in it for the long haul. We're not going away. I'm sure the animal rights movement isn't going away.
Rights movements never go away. They always get stronger. They always attract more people. And there is no point whatsoever in wasting your time fighting them, because we will grow and we will win. And that's a fact.
Who are the Shack 7?
The Shack 7 are 6 individual defendants, and the corporate defendant, Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty, and they're currently on trial here in Trenton for simply exercising their First Amendment right, and now they're being charged with terrorism. At stake here is the lives of 6 individuals. They're facing 23 years in prison, $750,000 in fines for simply speaking out against animal cruelty at Huntington Life Sciences. I think what's really going on here is that people have committed illegal actions, people have broke windows, people have spray-painted cars, and the government can't figure out who's taking those illegal actions. So they've kind of hung these people and laid the blame at their feet because they're the easy targets, they're the sitting ducks.
Are these defendants guilty of domestic terrorism as has essentially been alleged?
Absolutely not. As I said before, the defendants have never been charged with one actual crime. They're simply accused of engaging in speech.
Terrorism is a very specific crime, and it's got some problems under U.S. law because it essentially says it's the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property in the civilian or government population to coerce or intimidate people for social or political reasons. And it's that last pair, the social or political reasons, you can't criminalize that. That's First Amendment rights. So terrorism is very difficult to deal with. What really happens in a courtroom is you get somebody who's done a terroristic crime and you prosecute them, but you can't talk about their motives during the trial. But what really happens, if they get convicted for the common crime, arson, robbery, that kind of thing, vandalism, if they get convicted for that, in the sentencing phase, you can talk about that. And what happens really, the bottom line is they just get a longer sentence for the same crime.
Some of these people that they've just arrested on these quote-unquote domestic terrorist charges are looking at 100 to 300 years in prison. A murderer gets 8 years nowadays. A rapist gets 1 to 3 years at best. A pedophile, I don't even know. But how can we equate these the same way? I mean, there was a woman that started, I believe it was over 30 forest fires in the National Forest to get her employment up so that she could go fight fires and make some money. She was given 22 months in prison. Okay, why are these people, just because they're political, if they do a crime, they should get what everyone else gets for that crime. They shouldn't be put on this pedestal for having idealism and beliefs. They should be treated just like all other criminals that do that crime.
It's my life in the balance here, and she has no idea what's going on, just whoever. Go.
My client, Kevin Jonas, is the most wiretapped person in the United States. Having that said, with all the testimony and documents that the government will bring, they will not be able to show a single incident where my client and the co-defendants tried to do harm or directed anyone to do harm.
The jury was selected today. It definitely doesn't seem like a jury of their peers. Looks like we've got an age group of early 40s up into perhaps people in their 70s. A lot of sleepers on the jury, which could be good or bad for the defendants. A number of the juries actually slept through opening statements, through Mr. Cass's testimony, and from my understanding seemed pretty disinterested in the whole thing from opening to the testimony of Mr. Cass.
You try to look at the jury and scope them out and think, is this person going to be sympathetic to, my kid? You think you know what they might be thinking, but it's obvious appearances don't amount to anything. Don't know what's in these people's hearts. It's kind of hard because I see my second of 3 children sitting there, and he's not a criminal. He's not a violent person. He was always gentle and sweet.
I'm a big loudmouth. It's what I'm known for. And the one thing that this indictment has done, though, is it's made me question somewhat the value of speech. I mean, quite frankly, if you can spend 3 to 5 years in prison for talking, you might as well be out smashing windows. You might as well be out committing acts of sabotage. I think if we're indicted, and especially if some of my co-defendants get the sentence that
that the prosecutors are looking for, I think it's going to send a message to people everywhere that, fuck it, you know? Why bother going out on speaking tours if you're going to do jail time? Why not go and commit the acts of sabotage that, you know, tend to be more effective than me standing here talking to this camera?
Last year, when the Shack 7 trial started, what we saw was a big break in activism. And this time around, we said this is just absolutely unacceptable. We have to close them down, and we will close them down by continuing to do what we're doing, by being out here on the street, targeting these targets, pounding them into the ground, letting them know that just because 7 activists are on trial doesn't mean the campaign's going to stop. There's no stopping us, and there's no stopping that. In the UK, there's trials all the time, and the activists there even tell people, don't come to the courthouse. I'd rather you out there on the street trying to close them down, working, you know, fight for those puppies and kittens and bunnies. That is fucking disgusting.
You have blood on your hands. You're a vicious, vile woman, and you're responsible
Leave her alone, all
for
right?
the death
Leave her
of
alone.
100 animals. It's my
care.
business.
Why is it your business?
It's everyone's business when there's
Leave the lady alone,
and suffering that goes on. It's our responsibility to speak up.
They anally electrocute the minks and the foxes. Have you ever seen them? They put a probe in the mouth to probe up the anus.
We have confrontations all the time in the streets and the city.
Hey, yo, my man with the camera, how do you feel about all this? Like this?
And then Hurricane Katrina blew in, and that really sort of changed everything.
The media is not capturing the real situation with the animals down in the Gulf.
Tell me what's going on.
And what's happening is the media is doing little fluff stories.
I know.
And promoting these big animal organizations. So like the money and the promotion.
has raised millions.
12 million.
And all they're doing is blocking the grassroots rescuers and the other rescue groups.
And the real heroes here is the military, if you could believe it. And they're sneaking to help people. And the
Why
small
does the military,
organizations.
ladies, why does the military have to sneak to help animals and
Well, because they didn't get the command from the president. So what we're going to ask is that all your listeners call the White House. I even have the number to ask that they get the official command.
Most animals in Katrina died in their homes, in their cages, because they trusted Humane Society of the United States to come in and pick them up.
I don't support big, rich organizations anymore. I'm too educated.
I'm sorry, Best Friends, North Shore Animal League, small volunteers that were with no organizations, like Maggie McWayne, came in with their own money, did more rescuing than HSUS, who left in October, by the way, while still asking for money.
There was a lot of horror down there for people, for animals, and as somebody who's not necessarily animal welfare, animal rights, animal rescuer, it's just a matter of, you know, there were awful things happening to people and animals alike.
We were in the lower 9th Ward a lot, which was flooded. We did I waded through water to get dogs off of porches. A lot of breaking and entering to get dogs out of yards, out of houses.
Frankly, the strongest feeling I got down there as I left was, my God, there are these incredible groups doing a ton of work that I've never heard of.
I walked into this house, and because you're so focused on what you're doing, you're not really paying attention to what's around you. You're just looking for an animal. And I walked into this one room. There's a dog on the floor, dead. And I look around the room, and I realized I didn't walk into this room through a doorway. I walked into a hole. The dog, in a terror-stricken panic, trying to get out of that house, broke through the wall.
The whole thing that happened with Katrina, I think that it had to happen, but in some ways now, if people ever find themselves in a situation like that, they'll be able to take their animal with them. I could never leave mine.
If it's too dangerous for me to be here, it's too dangerous for my animals. Now, I understand There were stories that National Guard at gunpoint told people to get on the bus and leave their animals. My attitude is different. I go, my animals go. My animals don't go, I don't go.
Fuck you, leave my animal. I mean, fuck you, I'm taking my animal.
Look at the face. How could you leave that? How could you not rescue that? How could you ignore your humanity and turn away from that? You know, the groups that had all the money, you know, the SPCA and HSUS, they weren't the ones on the ground in the field.
I don't see any cuts or wounds on.
There wasn't one show that gave credit to any other organization except for HSUS.
I guess part of the problem is, you know, we're our own worst enemy because we weren't there for the press. We didn't hold press conferences. You know, we didn't make ourselves visible. We didn't take the time because we didn't have the time.
Yeah, HSUS likes to scoop in and take a lot of credit for a lot of stuff. And they're very big and they're very powerful.
The Humane Society of the United States has no relationship to any animal shelter anywhere with the name Humane Society. They don't run a single pound, a single adoption shelter anywhere. They advertise as though they do. They send direct mail fundraisers with pictures of puppies and kittens. It says we have to support pets, we have to adopt, spay, and neuter. And so people write checks thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to support my local. No, nonsense. The money goes to a $100 million a year animal rights lobbying group in Washington.
But HSUS keeps saying this is the worst disaster. No, correction. This was the biggest success for them. They earned more money off this disaster, and we have to stop that. Every time a disaster comes, along comes these monsters that prey on you, and they're hoping for a disaster because they prey on your emotions, collect that money.
How much money did you raise on the backs of those animals in New Orleans, and you left those animals?
Worth magazine, a few, maybe it's been a couple years ago, did a story on HSUS, and they wound up giving them a D because they spend over 50% of their income on fundraising.
They have not opened up their books at all for Katrina, let alone what they make.
It's against the law. If you ask a 501 where the hell the money is, they are required by law to tell you. So HSUS, to me, and to a lot of animal rights people, feels as if it's turning into Enron. You want me to say Enron without fucking?
Well, now that the Louisiana Attorney General's office is investigating the use of the donations taken in during Katrina from the Humane Society of the U.S. and also from the Red Cross. Frankly, that's a lot of do-re-mi they took in, and they need to be accountable for how they spent it.
They were the lead agency. They failed. Please do not let this HSUS ever head a disaster again. They failed. They should pay for this. There's no excuse for it.
51 years ago, when the HSUS started, they were here to reduce overpopulation and abuse. 51 years later, and nearly $10 billion donated to these national organizations, that's still our problem. And we've seen really virtually no improvement at all to speak of. I think that's sad. I think the world is a better place with them than without them, but I do believe that to whom much is given, much is expected, and they have fallen very short.
I think if more people understood that a check that you write to the Humane Society of the United States doesn't go to your local animal shelter, that money would dry up in a minute.
Because if you're still contributing after this movie or after any of this to HSUS, Humane Society of the United States, and Howard Stern did endorse us, or PETA, or any of these other big corrupt organizations that are just an empty shell, they're another Enron, then you're an idiot.
I wonder why PETA and HSUS didn't want to do this movie.
Yeah, do you think they had something to hide?
People say to us sometimes, well, why are you spending all of this time and money and whatever on animals when there are so many people who need help? And my rude answer to that is that people who ask questions like that usually aren't helping anything or anybody themselves. But my polite answer to that is that, in fact, people who care about animals usually care about people too, and vice versa. It's all part of the same thing. That people who grow up being kind to animals, being taught about kindness to animals by their parents and their teachers, generally turn into very good citizens, and the opposite is the case. people who are unkind to animals are usually not good around other people. It's actually part of the law in many cities and municipalities now that if the animal control officer discovers abuse of animals going on in a household, he or she has to report that to the child welfare authorities.
Thank you, Jeffrey Dahmer. The serial killer connection. Had it not been for the FBI study saying there is a direct connection between serial killers and animal abuse. Now, what does that mean for us in the world of animal welfare? We have been screaming, prosecute animal abuse. It matters. These lives matters. To us, it matters. To the general public and the people that create budgets, it may not matter. But now there is a connection to the person that kills people probably started with animals.
Here's some easy way, because there's 4 steps. Start with an adult dog, not a puppy. You need to have a second dog in your life, so 6 months or a year later, go get a puppy that would be compatible in size and energy level. Make sure it sleeps inside the house at nighttime and make sure it's spayed and neutered. And from that point in time, literally, most of our overpopulation problem would be resolved.
You have to open up all of this to the public. You have to tell them what's going on because they don't know. And they think that just getting an animal is something maybe they can just put in the backyard or discard or do. No, it's not. It's responsibility, which we've talked about. It's loving the animal. And I think a lot of the groups that are sort of maybe, if you want to say radical, have brought attention to the animals, though. And that's the important thing. That, to me, is the most wonderful. Not that I agree with a lot of the way they've done it, but that is very important.
This is the definition of my life. Lying in bed in the sunlight, choking on the vitamin tablet. Doctor gave in the hope to save me.
Boy, it's been a rough week. It's been a hard week. It's really hard when you have this jury sitting there and the prosecution gets to open first. And so they spend a whole month hearing about what a monster you are. And you just get to sit there with no chance to rebut it, no chance to, stand up and tell them, like, what does this have to do with me?
So Josh Harper finally decided that he would go up there and talk. And I said, listen, I've got to go up there. I've got to talk about these animals because I have a feeling that we're gonna lose. So at least let's hold our head up high. And if we're gonna lose, let's be noble about this. And at least let's educate the courtroom. Let's educate the jury. Let's talk about the animals and why we're doing these protests, why we're involved in the Shack campaign.
I wonder, how people sitting out in the gallery are viewing it, because I know that from my end of things, we tend to get pretty myopic. I mean, I saw one juror who looked like he was about to come out of his seat when they were showing the Thomas Perna video, which was a couple of the co-defendants doing a home demonstration outside of this woman's house, and somebody spit on her screen door, and they were screaming in her face. Inches away with this bullhorn. And again, I'm watching it, and I was thinking, I wasn't there. I wouldn't have done that. And but I look at this juror, and he's outraged, and so that's all I can think is just like, this guy's going to want to find us guilty.
So I decided to testify, and I know that the defendants, my fellow defendants, were not happy about it.
I'm really hoping that the jury sees that even though the things I said were controversial, that even though they might despise the things that I said, I'm really hoping that they'll believe I had the right to say them.
I had a bad feeling the minute that jury was picked. And then it kind of went downhill after that. Because I felt that all the defendants needed to testify. I felt very strongly that the animals needed to be brought into that courtroom, even though the judge said that the animals animal testing, vivisection, animal experimentation. You could not even talk about it. How could you not talk about the very thing that motivated and that motivates this entire campaign?
Okay, I was very shocked about the Shack 7 convictions because what this was, and the press didn't even pick up on it, which I found suspicious. This was the first time ever they've had terrorist arrests put next to Al-Qaeda for mere words on a website.
I was devastated, not only for the American public, for freedom of speech, for the downfall of the Constitution, but for my friends.
Are we going to start taking down the websites of the KKK?
You know, we started working on this prior to the passage of the domestic terrorism bill that they're being found guilty under now, and it's just such a completely different world. We passed that in 1993, and it's taken all these years for people to finally be convicted under it. And so I think that there's some big changes coming.
I think it's going to totally backfire and bite the government in the butt, because you can't keep on stuffing people, their voices, without having something pop up over here. And so I think, like the McCarthy era, I think it's going to get so bad that finally everybody, even if they don't even care about animals, are going to finally say, hey, we just won't take this anymore, and rise up. And then you'll see the pendulum swinging back.
There's really not much in the way of deterrence to convict people. All it does is put them out of commission for a while. Once you've got a movement-like behavior where there's a conspiracy of shared values, people who think kind of alike, there will always be somebody out there to pick up the next torch and throw it at somebody.
Whatever repression we as a movement may face, we cannot let it scare us, we cannot let it slow us, and we cannot let it stop us now.
If we're going to allow these, at the end of the day, minor government actions to stop us, then what's the point of living?
I think that when PETA and the radical groups are taken out, and I think that they will be.
Wake up, puppy killers!
And I think it'll be the best thing for the animal protection movement overall.
I don't know what to say to America. If I did, maybe I wouldn't be in so much trouble. Apparently America doesn't like what I have to say, and they like hearing that hamburgers are 99 cents.
You can't see these things and allow them to continue. I mean, what kind of person would I be to have seen this and to know that it's occurring and to turn a blind eye to it?
But I think eventually America will come around to the recognition that animal welfare is a time-honored, wonderful pursuit. Animal rights is destructive as all get out.
All this for animals? The same sort of question, though, that I imagine abolitionists were asked. All this for a black? Or men involved in the suffrage movement. All this so women can vote? All this so kids don't have to work in those sweatshops? So these people can have fair labor laws for the Irish, for the Jews? Same questions have been asked over and over again in every other social justice movement, and now it's finally being asked of animals. Yes, all this for an animal.
Here's one thing you may not know. Mommy kills animals. I know it sounds kind of fantastical, but your laws ain't acting that natural. Your mommy kills animals. I get the chills, but it's factual. Your mommy kills animals. She gets a thrill for where marsupials.
The animals, I love them. The furriers, I condemn. And if you wear their pelts, you're gonna get my belt. I'll bust a nail. You wanna hear a tragic tale? The FBI is on my tail. They'd like to put me in a jail. I'll get as fat as a beluga whale, not me. So come on down and join me and listen as I decree. Set the animals free!
Here's one thing you may not know. Mommy kills animals. I'm sorry for being so theatrical, but your mother acts like a Neanderthal. Your mommy kills animals. Her ugly grill makes a nasty visual. Your mommy kills animals. She's got the skills to where dead critters is seasonal.
Everybody talk about animals, but nobody talking about manimals. Like whales and dolphins and fishes. I hope God grants these wishes. Free the dolphins in the sea. Let the damn fishes, let the fishes just be.
Your mommy kills animals. I get the chills to picture that lady when she's menstrual. Your mommy kills animals. She gets her thrills from wearing Mongolian mongrels.
So now you've all been warned through my trusty old bullhorn. No animals for fashion. Try to have compassion. This ain't the valley. Before we